All right, to politics now, and a battle brewing over a recent Supreme Court ruling that increases how much money corporations and unions can spend on campaign and political ads. President Obama using his weekly address to lash out at Republicans, saying that they're blocking efforts to regulate spending by special interest groups in elections. Fox's Major Garrett traveling with the First Family on Martha's Vineyard. Major, good to see you. So the president is only one vote shy in the Senate on this issue, and I understand he's trying to pressure some moderate Republicans by mentioning a Republican president. Who's he talking about?
That's right. That's right, Rick. Not a contemporary Republican president, but one from far ago, the early part of the 20th century to be exact. The president and his Democratic allies in the United States Senate have 59 votes with their entire Democratic majority, plus Connecticut independent Joe Lieberman. They need one Republican to get over a Republican filibuster to pass in the Senate what's already passed in the House. Legislation that would require much greater disclosure of any corporation or union or nonprofit involving itself directly in supporting any ads in this midterm election for candidates or against candidates. And the president talked today in his weekly address about Teddy Roosevelt.
A century ago, it was a Republican president, Teddy Roosevelt, who first tried to tackle the issue of corporate influence on our elections. He actually called it one of the principal sources of corruption in our political affairs. And he proposed strict limits on corporate influence in elections.
In fact, Teddy Roosevelt was successful in banning direct corporate contributions in federal elections. He also called way back then, 1905 to be exact, for public financing of political campaigns in America through the major parties, the Republican and Democratic Party. That went nowhere. And for a century now, the idea of public financing has pretty much gone the same direction, nowhere. Rick?
Major, the Republicans have lost one or two of their more moderate members to a couple of items on the president's agenda, but they're sticking together on this one, right? They're holding tight?
They are holding tight, and what the president is trying to do with this weekly address and other pressure is try to appeal to Republicans in this neck of the woods, geographically in the United States. Susan Collins, Olympia Snowe, Republicans from Maine, and Scott Brown, recently elected in Massachusetts. But Senator Brown is categorically opposed to this Democratic-backed legislation, and so far, so have the two main Republicans. For his part, the Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell issued a statement today that reads in part, let me read part of it to our audience, quote, "Americans want us to focus on jobs, but by focusing on an election bill, Democrats are sending a clear message to the American people that their jobs aren't as important as the jobs of embattled Democrat politicians." Rick, you can bet this issue will come up on the Senate floor when everyone gets back from vacation in mid-September. And if that means the Democrats find that one Republican vote, and there are scant chances of that happening, but if they do, and this is signed into law, it would go into effect 30 days thereafter, probably not in time to dramatically affect the midterm elections. Rick, back to you in New York.
Major Garrett on Martha's Vineyard, thanks very much. And that Supreme Court ruling could have a major impact on the midterm elections coming up. According to a new report, Democrats are worried that outside interest groups will spend less for their candidates, while groups backing Republicans are gearing up for a big campaign spending blitz. So how critical is this for both parties? Let's bring in our political panel. Tyler Harbour is a GOP pollster and a strategist with Wilson Research Strategies, and Mark Levine is a constitutional attorney and radio talk show host. Gentlemen, good to see both of you. Thanks so much for being here. And Mark, the story here is that wealthy Democrats who in the past have been all too willing to fork over their money for Democrats, they're not doing it this time around. What do you think it is? Is it that they just decided that the Democrats are going to lose in November?
I think they can't compete against Saudi Arabia and China and Exxon and BP and all the people that the Supreme Court said can control our elections in the future. That's why this decision is the most really biggest threat to our democracy in 100 years since Teddy Roosevelt. This idea that China can give at will, and Republicans don't want to let you know that. See, here's the thing I don't understand. Maybe Tyler can explain why Republicans want to hide it all under the rug. If Saudi Arabia is financing your elections, why not let the American people know who controls your politicians? It's pure politics that's wrong.
Tyler, what's the matter with letting people know where the money's coming from?
This president wants you to believe that DISCLOSE Act does nothing but disclose all the donors on all sides. What he's not telling you is DISCLOSE Act has a huge loophole that allows unions and pro-left organizations to not disclose at all. So we're going to have unions and organizations like AARP and the Sierra Club and a number of left-leaning organizations to do this. The other problem with DISCLOSE Act is it goes into effect in 30 days, but it'll take the Federal Election Commission a year to come up with rules and regulations. So what the president and what the Democrats are trying to do is just stop spending from outside sources that could be pro-right until this election's over, because they know they're going to lose one way or the other.
What's going on, though, Mark? What's going on with the spending, though, Mark? Because it was only a couple of years ago that this sort of situation was reversed, where the Democratic voters and Democratic donors were so geared up, they were rallying together. George Bush was on the mailing and marketing of every kind of Democratic-leaning group, and now they don't have anybody like George Bush. Is that the problem?
I think the problem is that now we know that rich countries and rich companies can control our elections. It kind of scares little donors away. You know, President Obama had more than 1 million people donating him money, including donations of $10 and $20. That made a difference 2 years ago. Now it's too late. Now Exxon can spend 14 amount.
Why aren't traditional Democratic voters, why aren't the George Soroses of the world, the MoveOn.orgs of the world, why aren't these groups raising money at the kind of clip that they have in the past?
Well, I hope they can. Part of it may be disappointment that Obama has moved too far to the center. But I think a large part of it is realizing that you cannot compete with China or Exxon or all the other people the Republicans want to control their elections. Exxon made $42 billion in profit, and all Americans all across the country only gave $3 billion to every presidential candidate. When one corporation can have 14 times more power than all of America put together, you can't possibly compete. Our democracy is dead. And I should say this about the loophole. Democrats support the bill without the loophole. Not a single Republican does.
Tyler, what about Barack Obama helping Republicans raise money? The Democrats don't have George W. Bush, but the Republicans certainly have Barack Obama, and all you need to do is look and see what the Chamber of Commerce has promised to spend in this upcoming election cycle to see exactly how some of these more Republican-leaning groups are geared up for this battle.
Look, Barack Obama is stuck in a Goldilocks nightmare. His policies haven't been enough for the left to really come on board. They think he should have done more. So that leaves the George Soroses and some of the MoveOn.org organizations in this lukewarm, unenthusiastic frame of mind that they're not going to spend any more money for this guy. We're talking about the same president that set records in 2008. Now he's having problems raising money for his own party. You know, the DISCLOSE Act is a distraction from the truth that the voters out there are unenthused about re-electing a Congress or re-electing Democrats to Congress that have control of the power and control in all of the power. And I think Obama is in a situation where his falling approval numbers just fan the fire to cause problems for the Democrats. I mean, this is a classic problem.
Obviously, they don't have all the power.
Go ahead, real quick, Mark.
The Republicans are filibustering everything, including the DISCLOSE Act. Look, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, Republican or Democrat, 80% of Americans oppose the Supreme Court opinion and agree with Theodore Roosevelt. If money's going to control politics, and I hate it, but if it is, we should at least know where the money's coming from. And I hope people will encourage their senator representative to at least let us know who's pulling the strings and owning our politicians.
All right, well, the president only needs to peel away one Republican vote. We'll see what happens. Mark Levine, Tyler Harbor, gentlemen, thanks for coming in on the weekend. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Rick.
Janie?
Secretary of State Hillary